All right, cool. Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is the War on Youth meeting. My name is Nadia. I'm with the Stop LAPD Spine Coalition. And just before we get started, just letting folks know it is being recorded, the webinar. And before I share the agenda for today, basically, just wanted to go through a couple things. We do have to have people muted, unfortunately, because we have been Zoom bombed a few times where people have said just really like messed up, racist, awful things, and so as a result, we have to do that. But we want this to be interactive. So and also the chat, you're not able to put anything in the chat. But if you do want something to be shared with folks, like any resources or a question or any point you want to make, feel free to just put it in the chat and it'll come to the hosts and then we can share it with folks. Also, if you want to say anything, ask any questions, say anything, you can do that as well. And just by raising your hand, there's a raise hand thingy button. Or you can just put in the chat that you want to say a comment. Yeah, unfortunately we don't like to have to police folks, and that's not the intention, but unfortunately, because we've been zoomed on, we've had to do that. So yes, so please message us or put your hand up if you want to say anything or put something in the chat. And I don't know, am I missing anything else logistically? How many? Maybe
No,
not.
I think you got everything covered. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Okay, so then we'll get started. So basically today, we're gonna start with an overview of what are the programs. So when we talk about the War on Youth, Celine, she'll introduce herself, is gonna go over that, what those programs consist of, and how young people, particularly Black and Brown youth and Muslim and immigrant and Indigenous youth, are being targeted and criminalized as threats to national security. So we're going to go over those programs, and then we'll be talking with the Youth Justice Coalition and their push for Measure J, and how Measure J has impacted young people, and what the goal is as well with that. And then we'll be talking with a group called Encode Justice, which is a youth group as well, and they'll be sharing their work and what support they could use. And then from there, we'll talk a little bit about some of the police commission things that are going on. And so, yeah, that's basically the plan for the day, for the meeting. And feel free at the end, if anyone has announcements, you're welcome to share as well. Okay, so let's get started then. Celine, I'll pass it over to you if you'd like to go do an overview of the programs.
Yeah, sure. Hey, everyone. My name is Celine. My pronouns are she, her. And I organize locally with the Palestinian Youth Movement. And so we've been partnering with the Stop LAPD Spine Coalition for a couple of years now, in addition to a couple other local organizations, to combat surveillance programs and community policing programs, including the Countering Violent Extremism. That was pushed initially by the Department of Homeland Security. I think under the Obama administration. I think it was piloted in Los Angeles in 2014. And it has been recently rebranded as the quote unquote Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention Program, also still under the Department of Homeland Security. And it basically, as Nadia was saying, like these programs are meant to criminalize youth of color. So I'll go over kind of what they are and how they operate. With our, we have some fact sheets and resources about what these programs look like. So we can also send those out. So basically, Countering Violent Extremism, they've rebranded it over the years multiple times. So it's not always called that, but the idea is that these programs or these surveillance programs are based on the idea that there is such a thing as a clear and identifiable path to extremism or radicalization, and that there are indicators that can reveal when someone is on that path. And these indicators for extremism that the Department of Homeland Security outlines are really broad, but they're focused enough that they are targeting like everyday activities of certain communities. And When we saw the initial piloting of countering violent extremism, it was very clear that Muslims are being heavily targeted. The indicators of extremism that the Department of Homeland Security outlined included like being critical of US foreign policy or going to the mosque often or visiting the Middle East and things like that. And even growing a beard. So these were indicators that were broad enough, again, to target the everyday activities of certain communities and kind of equated like religious difference, racial difference, or political difference with potential for extremism. And the idea that there is a path to radicalization is completely scientifically unsound, and it has been repeatedly debunked. Yet it is still the premise for this entire program. Like there's no such thing as an actual path to radicalization. There's no way to predict that. And this idea of radicalization posits that it initially had come out of these like really Islamophobic policies in Europe, posited that increased religiosity and politicization of Muslims could lead to an increased threat of terrorism. And this also has its legacy in the long history of policing of Black communities, including the law enforcement's utilization of the broken windows policing model, which theorizes that local, cultural, and social, like everyday norms play a role in the development of criminal activity, therefore justifying the policing of everyday life in Black communities, insinuating that like something small, something very small and basic, some everyday activity could potentially lead to a crime. So that means that law enforcement has to be present in those communities on the day-to-day and surveilling and monitoring and criminalizing. And these logics, of course, are very deeply racist. They imply that criminality or terrorism are inherent to certain communities. And again, link everyday activity with a quote unquote potential for crime. So there are really similar programs that we've also been fighting, including Preventing Violent Extremism, which initially was released by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or the FBI, and that was really targeting immigrant youth. So the indicators that they had outlined included like being too much into one's culture, or expressing like anger or frustration in school, things that kids do in school, and really also targeting like immigrant youth specifically in the K through 12, to also kind of give an excuse for law enforcement to surveil immigrant youth as potential national security threats. The other program, of course, the report, there's a report released by the FBI, I think it was in 2017 or was it 2016, called the Black Identity Extremism Report, where they also basically say that Black Lives Matter activists can potentially become extremists because of their political activity and quote unquote perception of police violence. So not even acknowledging that police violence is a reality, but saying that Black political activity could be equated with the potential for extremism. So again, the whole intention of these types of programs, they're all based on these like pre-crime models that are completely, again, like not, they're debunked. But the intent is to criminalize our communities. The intent is also and the way they operate is really insidious too, because they get disguised as like community alternatives to policing. They're brought in as like community police partnerships or community policing programs where basically, for example, like the Department of Homeland Security will release a grant opportunity. Community institutions will apply for those grants. So they basically partner with like law enforcement, or they partner with the Department of Homeland Security. And these are like any institutions that have relationships with communities. So like, and various NGOs have applied for this. So basically the DHS partners with institutions that already have relationships with community, and they have them do the reporting and they have them do the surveilling. So they give them these indicators of extremism, and they have these institutions share information about their like constituencies or their bases. So they're basically leveraging existing relationships. Instead of the FBI and DHS going in directly to communities, they're partnering with institutions that already have trusted relationships and having them do that reporting. So that's the really insidious part of how these programs operate. And again, the recent programs we're fighting, there's been a recent grant cycle. And between the Palestinian Youth Movement and Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, we're really looking at the way that these programs are being implemented in academic institutions as well as through K through 12 schools. So that's our current campaign, looking at how these programs are being pushed through educational institutions and how they impact our communities. And basically, another implication of these programs is that it gives law enforcement access to spaces that otherwise would be unavailable to them. Again, through these partnerships with community institutions. So it legitimizes and justifies discrimination against marginalized communities. It deputizes service providers, including mental health providers, teachers, and so on, to report on community members. And of course, it basically offers funding to organizations through a counterterrorism framework, basically insinuate that we only deserve resources because we're deemed a threat. And the only funding we can get is tied to, like, there's strings attached where we'd have to report on our own community members. So in 2018, I believe, Stop LAPD Spine Coalition worked with the teachers union to draft and pass a motion, which was unanimously passed, in which the educators and UTLA pledged against the implementation of PVE and CVE in schools. And that helped with the larger fight we were fighting on the city level against Garcetti's attempt to accept CVE funding from DHS. And we were successful in that fight. Eventually, LA County did not accept it, but it did not stop the Department of Homeland Security from continuing to push these programs. They've been, so again, there's this recent grant cycle that came out only 2 months ago. So that's, I hope that was a clear where these programs are headed. In the UK, they're about 10 years ahead of where we're at in the US with these programs. So UK has a program called Prevent. It's pretty much the same thing as countering violent extremism, except in the UK, it's a nationalized program. And everybody who works in the public sector is a mandated reporter. Here, they're still testing it and implementing it in various cities and counties. So it's not nationalized completely yet, but in the UK, that's kind of where it's headed, where everyone would become a mandated reporter and would have to fill quotas and report on their own youth and clients and students and so on. And yeah, we can talk more about our campaign.
Nice. Thank you, Celine. Just want to see if anyone has any questions. I did put the names of the programs in the chat as well. So just wanted to pause and see if anyone has a question. Feel free to message or raise your hand. Okay, cool. If anything comes up, feel free to ask us. And like Celine said, there's different ways we have been fighting back. And we just want to invite folks. So at the end of the meeting, we'll see if anybody wants to support. We have a working meeting coming up next Wednesday at 4 p.m., which, the general meetings is really a space for us to, to build with folks, connect with folks, share information, and, do a knowledge exchange with people. And so what we hope to do then on the working meetings would be things like working on our outreach materials, our videos, research, and the Public Records Act requests as well, which are basically the way we get information, right? It's the legal way people are entitled to information from public agencies. And so Stop LAPD Spying, in conjunction with other folks, have been creating and writing several PRAs. We've been in a lawsuit as well around that. And so there's a lot to do with the Public Records Act request and other work in general. So just something to think about at the end of the meeting. We'll reach out and see if anybody wants to help out with that. Or like Akil is putting in the chat, you can message us with your email to join in on that. And even if you can't make next Wednesday at 4, we'll be having a working meeting every month, and there's other chances to plug in. So, all right, cool. So let's see then. Let's go with Jabo then. Hi, Jabo. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey y'all, how y'all doing? My name is Jabo. I'm the Freedom Arts Coordinator with the Youth Justice Coalition, and I'm also a youth organizer. Pronouns are he, him, his. Yeah, that's a little bit about me. There's a lot more, but I'm not gonna take up all that time.
That's all good. No, thank you. Appreciate you being here and sharing space with us, Jabo. Always got a lot of love for YJC. So yeah, basically we're just going to be talking about Measure J. So just want to start off by asking if you can talk about what Measure J is and what did the fight look like for the Youth Justice Coalition to push for it.
Yeah, so Measure J stands for Measure Justice. And it's a measure that we had fought to put on the ballot for people to vote on. And the measure is basically that we're gonna be divesting or reallocating 10% of LA County's budget. We're gonna be reallocating 10% of LA County's county budget and putting it into things like youth development, housing, jobs, after school programs, like so many, like everything that we've been fighting for so long. All these things is what it's gonna be doing, like small businesses, like all these things. And the reason like why YJC decided to kind of like get involved and fight for it is because like you know a lot of times the fight in social justice and the work that we do, a lot of time young people are left out. But we were actively involved in Measure J, and not just involved, but we were able to put our input and say, you know what, we want youth development to be one of the core values of Measure J. And that's kind of a little bit about what the fight was. The fight was like, just trying to make sure people know that, Measure J isn't just for like housing and just for adults. It is prioritizing youth development and stuff like that. So it's a huge win for LA County and stuff like that.
Really quick on that, I was just wondering, what was it like then, like pushing for it, like during COVID too, right? Because I know it's like organizing through COVID has been. So I'm just.
Yeah, for me it was definitely difficult. Some people adopted to it easier. There was still people meeting up, like not really meeting up, but like, like for interviews and stuff like that. There was some stuff happening. A lot of phone banking. I'm talking like a couple 100,000 calls type stuff. So a lot of phone banking, a lot of like virtual actions, like reaching out to people. And then another thing is just like the word of mouth. Like, LA seems big, but it's not really big. So when people are looking for things to vote for, and they see Measure J, um, like I don't think it's something that from the get-go, like when we started fighting for it, I knew it was something that we were gonna win. Maybe like 3-4 years ago, I would not have thought that it was gonna win. Like I would have still probably put the energy, but not as much. But this time around, I feel like the atmosphere and everything that's happening is kind of like, yeah, I kind of knew it was gonna be a win.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for sharing. So that's a lot of calls, man. But yeah, and so I wanted to know then how does this fight fit into YJC's larger work? I know like there was the 1%, the 5% campaign, and then other pushes. So how would you connect it to that?
Yeah, so it's been 10 years since we started for the 1% campaign. And then like 10 years later now we're here and we're reallocating 10% of the budget. And it's crazy because imagine like the fight had to be for a whole decade so that we could get here. We've been fighting for youth development. We've been fighting for youth jobs. We've been fighting for housing. We've been fighting for all these things for so long. We've been fighting to divest money from the sheriffs and divest money from law enforcement for so long. So this what happened is basically like something that YJC had been fighting for so long. Like it's something that we've been working on for like a long while, So it definitely feels good. I'm not gonna lie, it definitely feels good.
Nice. So and I'm so sorry, you all. I just realized I tried to copy and paste something else. It was supposed to put the question, but that's a recipe I gave my students earlier for a tea. A recipe if you're ever getting sick, for some lemon, garlic, ginger. My bad. I was trying to type the question, um, but just wondering, Jabo, so is the fight still continuing for 5%, like specifically for youth development?
Yeah, because I mean, it is a huge victory, and one thing we realized early on down the road is that we weren't gonna get like everything we're looking for one like at one time. Like one of the things we were fighting for was like a youth development department, but we was also fighting for divesting money from the sheriffs and then or from law enforcement, and we was doing like a lot of things at the same time. And one thing we noticed is that all of it isn't gonna come together just like that. We ended up getting the youth diversion and development department, so that came by itself, and then now we're actually getting like because of the youth justice work group, we're actually getting an actual youth development department, and now with Measure J, we divested money from the sheriffs, but we still want to divest more money, and also this this divestment was like a more larger one, so like for adults and everybody. So we're still fighting for like metro passes and peace builders and stuff like that. I'm probably gonna work with that like through the alternatives to incarceration and stuff like that. But we're actively like a part of the Justice LA coalition. So um, we work on the ATI and we work on stuff like that. But what we try to do is bring like a youth perspective in all of those spaces so that, when we do have alternatives to incarceration and all these programs that is going to be offered, we could be getting it offered for young people too. Um, so that's what like we already know that, it's not going to happen like one at a time. I mean, like one big thing, like one big victory, but we are like allocating the victories like one by one. So the fight for the 5% campaign still continues, and we're probably gonna expand someday, like to 10, 20, 30%. But there's still a lot of things that needs to kind of like get done, and even with the Measure J process, like Measure J still needs to be implemented, and that's something to talk about too, like we're gonna have to be actively involved in the process with Reimagine LA and stuff like that. And then, even though it's passed, like we don't know who gets to kind of like control what happens and stuff like that. Kind of like the ATI process, how they hired a prosecutor to kind of run the ATI process, and we thought it was like a huge victory, and then it was kind of like a little bit of setback. So we also we gotta be like dedicated, cautious, and still be a part of the work throughout the implementation process.
Yeah. And then so then that kind of does lead into, so then how does the passing of Measure J, how does it impact young people? And then also like, so you kind of started talking about it. What is that fight looking like now, and like what support is needed? Just from other orgs or folks in general.
Say that again.
So because you were kind of started touching on it right around what might be needed, now that Measure J has passed. And so what do you think that fight is going to look like, and how can how can other orgs or individuals support in that?
Yeah. So the implementation process is gonna be a long process. Folks could connect with Reimagine LA and us. Reimagine LA is still gonna be an active coalition that's still gonna be working. Um, but as far as in like the implementation process, there's gonna be some stuff around ATI, and then there's on the youth side, there also gotta be work about what like this youth development department is gonna look like, and like what the young people want. So you know as far as in like what the work is looking like how people could collaborate, I would say just like stay tapped in. The election is just over, but I would say probably by next week the work is already gonna be back on, and folks is already gonna be working on that again. And there's gonna be, if y'all follow the Reimagine LA or Youth Justice LA or Justice LA now on Instagram, there's like updates on actions, the board of supervisors. I think something that is needed like right now is that we're trying to get we just finished with the Youth Justice Reimagined, where we're trying to get official like youth development department, and it's gonna be a motion at the board of supervisors, and we're pushing for the 24th for it to be the motion on the 24th, the last motion before the ending of the year. But what would be helpful is for people to go you know, give public comment and encourage the board of supervisors and let them know, you know, we out here, we want this to be passed. I feel like those are ways that we could show up, virtual actions and different stuff like that too. Because we're all still adapting. We don't know when we're going back to normal, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it would be great, Jibbo, if you don't mind, if you could put the info, if you could put the info in the chat. Oh, Jibbo, were you saying something? We can't hear you. Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, if you don't mind putting the social media info in the chat. We can't hear you. It looks like you're unmuted. Here, try to say something. Try to say something now, maybe. Okay. Okay, yeah, so Jabo, we can't hear you anymore. I know it looks like you were trying to talk. But yeah, if you could put that in the chat, and then I was gonna also ask, yeah, we can't hear you. Okay. All right. Well, maybe I don't know, Jabo, if you maybe you could type it and you could try and get back out and in. Because one thing I was gonna ask, and I don't know if maybe you had worked on it too, was you know, another big win for the Justice Coalition was LAPD announcing that they won't take part in the CalGang database anymore. So also wanted to see if you wanted to talk about that, but now we can't hear you. Okay,
They're saying they're gonna hop off and hop back on.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe what we can do if Akhil and Sneha, I know y'all like to talk as well. Oh, here, you know what? Actually,
Yeah, they're back.
Let's just see.
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, Jabo, go ahead and try to unmute.
Hey, y'all.
Great. Hi.
All right. Yay. Cool. Yeah, so I was just a couple things. I don't know if you had heard one, Jabo, was if you could put the social media info for Youth Justice Coalition, that would be great, so folks can connect and support the work.
Yeah, I'll put it right now. It's Youth Justice LA on all platforms.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, there y'all go. And real quick, Jabo, I don't know if you had worked on this fight. So, you know, feel free to share whatever you might know. But you know, obviously another big win for YJC was you know, LAPD announcing they're not going to take part in the CalGang database. I don't know if maybe you could share about that, or anything you might know and how that connects to the work, or Measure J, or however.
I worked on it early on, but I would throughout like this early process around the elections and stuff. I was more caught up with Measure J. But I think it's a huge victory. LAPD is one of the most like racist and dangerous like set of police in the country. So I think that's definitely a huge victory. But I didn't work on it like recently, so I'm not sure. Yeah.
No, but thank you. And yeah, and thank you for sharing about Measure J and definitely I know like even the state thinks a lot about it and yeah, the 1% and 5% campaign of, I feel like YJC has been talking about alternatives and what it means to abolish and what else are we putting in place. So props to y'all and everything. And I don't know if there's anything else you want to share or also want to open the floor and see if folks have any questions or comments for Jabo.
Yeah, I would definitely want to say that there's a rapid relief fund that we're raising money for a Black migrant family. Um, so if you all, I encourage y'all to share it, or if you all do have the capacity, you all could donate. It's on our Instagram, but I could also put it in the chat. I don't know how you do that, but yeah.
That would be great, Jabo. If there's a link or anything, feel free to share it. Or if you just want to type in the chat like the rapid relief and what it is, and where folks could go, that would be great. Cool.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Cool. Thank you. So yeah, anyone have any questions or comments? Feel free to raise your hand. Feel free to message us in the chat. Okay.
I wanted to say that it might be cool if like us at like if we could have like a discussion maybe during our next meeting about how like these types of like surveillance programs come in and co-opt like youth spaces really quickly, or they try to, just so we like kind of know how to like identify it in case that is attempted to be brought in with like these local wins and statewide wins with the proposition. But yeah, that's just my thought there.
Yeah, actually, thank you for raising that, Celine. And I don't know if folks caught on when Celine was talking about the programs. One of the things that makes them like especially sneaky, the anti-violent extremism programs, is they're pushed as if they're not like police related, right? They're pushed at, oh, these are, it's the community helping themselves. And so I think right now, especially that the fight for abolition has a larger, more of a mainstream level than it did, even a year or two ago. That's definitely something for us to think about. So thank you for lifting that, Celine. I think we should talk about that for sure at the next meeting. Yeah. Any other comments or questions from folks?
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Akil.
I'm just wondering about after supposedly the CalGang database is no longer being used, what is the process for sort of like reckoning with what happened with it? And like, has YJC been pushing, or can we help in any way YJC in pushing for reparations for the people who were on it, for exposure of the people who created it, and like all those kinds of things? I'm just wondering what happens in the sort of the fallout of that. And then are there still sneaky ways that they're trying to do the same thing even after that has been shut down? That's a question for Jabo.
Can you repeat the beginning of the question again?
Yeah, just wondering about sort of the reckoning with after the program is shut down, what like reparations or some kind of accounting for the harm that happened to people who were on the database, and how we can help with efforts for that. And then also if there are ways that the state is trying to do the same thing, even though that database is shut down, like how has it transformed into sort of the next thing?
Well, what I can say is law enforcement is always trying to create some type of law or something to kind of like imprison or affect the black and the brown community and low income communities, not just in LA but across the state of California. So we actively have to have efforts of fighting and working to make sure and keep up, making sure that anything they're trying to put up, we're knocking down. They have like paid staff just to lobby for these bills and these things that they're thing. But as far as in the Cal gang data, like the gang database, like I'm I'm not sure if specifically to that right now if they're gonna be doing something around that. And then as far as in the work to get reparations and stuff like that, I think that's definitely a conversation that needs to be talked about. Um, and I think now is like the perfect time, like moving forward, since we was all kind of busy working on like these measure ballots and the election and stuff like that. But now that things is opening back up, I think is a perfect time to talk about organizing people and organizing for reparations and stuff moving forward.
There's a question from Carissa. Let me just unmute Carissa and see if they want to ask it directly. Uh, Carissa, do you want to unmute yourself? Yes, please go ahead
Yeah.
and ask the question.
Hi. Sorry. I have a question about the motion that you mentioned on the 24th. What did you want us to say for the public comment?
So for the public comment, just it could be written, but just why you all would. I mean, the report, the Youth Justice Work Group report is online, but basically we're voting for a youth development department and the report of like what this youth development department will have. And I could put the report in the chat, but if you read the report, then you could say, I support this because such and such and such, and we're asking that you all vote yes on this and in favor of this, and that just something basic. I could put it in the chat right now.
Oh, I think, could you unmute? Carissa, did you want to be unmuted again? I saw them trying to say something. Oh, no, okay. All right, cool. I know it's frustrating with the mute thing. Cool, well, thank you. And yes, okay, cool, that'll be good. Jabel's gonna put that in the chat. Any other questions or comments? All right, great. Cool. Well, thank you again, Jabo. Really appreciate you coming and just sharing the work with us. And we'll definitely, the coalition supports you, and sounds like folks are gonna jump in and support as well. So yeah, appreciate you being here. And
Thank you. And then I couldn't get the link for the for the Rapid Relief Fund, but if you all go on the Instagram, it's one of the first things there. Follow us at Youth Justice LA on Instagram. Yeah.
okay, I'll put that in the chat too. And it was and I remember you put it up here at Youth Justice LA. Perfect. Cool. All right. Well, thank you. So we'll go ahead and move forward. I'm gonna also now talk to another group of you doing some dope work. So Akil, Sneha, if y'all want to introduce yourselves and take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Akil. I'm also a part of the coordinating team of Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. And I want to bring in Sneha, who is representing the organization Encode Justice. Sneha, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your organization?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Sneha, and I'm the founder and president at Encode Justice. And we are a youth-led coalition building a movement for human rights and justice under AI, especially as algorithms pervade our lives. And most specifically, we recently wrapped up a campaign against Proposition 25, in which we worked with the Justice LA Coalition. And essentially, we were fighting the use of pretrial risk assessment tools in California, which are algorithms that would have replaced cash bail and that would have been used to determine pretrial release decisions. And right now, we're working on a stand up to surveillance campaign in which we're combating police use of facial recognition technology and other forms of surveillance nationwide. And so that's kind of a brief overview of our work, and I can go into more depth a little bit later as Akil asks more questions.
Oh, great. Yeah. So first, can you give us an overview of what exactly a risk assessment is? Let's talk about like the vocabulary that it might be new to some people. Risk assessment, artificial intelligence, and algorithm. Can you tell us a little bit about what those three terms mean, and we can get into how they affect people as well. But yeah, so what exactly is a risk assessment?
Yeah, of course. So you have a questionnaire that kind of asks about specific characteristics pertaining to an individual defendant and their case. For example, their age, their zip code, their previous criminal history, how old they were when they were first arrested, whether or not they have a permanent address, things like that. And those are essentially synthesized and used to generate a risk score using a statistical model known as a risk assessment algorithm. And that risk score is essentially used to supplement a judge's decision in terms of pretrial release decisions and whether or not that person should be detained or released prior to their trial. And obviously, in California, we had Proposition 25, which was a referendum on a law that would have replaced California's already contentious cash bail system with a system of risk assessment and increased judicial discretion. And even though that was supported by much of the establishment, it was resisted by a lot of civil rights groups and organizations who saw the threat of that kind of technology and who knew that that would set a dangerous precedent for the rest of the nation, since California obviously does have such a large criminal justice system. And so we resisted Proposition 25. And in terms of the vocabulary and the terminology here, kind of giving a brief overview without getting too technical. So a risk assessment is essentially an application of an algorithm that uses machine learning, which is an artificial intelligence technique, if that makes sense. So machine learning is kind of that statistical process by which a computer is trained to make decisions based on historical data. And that historical data is used to inform the model to find trends and patterns that can be extrapolated to new data. So that's machine learning. And that's sort of a underlying technique within this broader subset that we now know as artificial intelligence, which is transforming our lives, everything from self-driving cars to robots to these pretrial, algorithms. And so that's kind of a brief overview of what that technology looks like. And I can talk more about that later as well as the impact that they have on communities of color specifically.
So I think that it's so important that we all really understand these terms, because unfortunately we'll be living with this vocabulary for a long time. So before we go on to the next question, I just wanted to make sure if anybody in the, I was gonna say in the room, if anybody in the Zoom has any questions for Sneha about specifically risk assessments, algorithms, machine learning, artificial intelligence, go for it. And you can message me and I can read out loud, or you can raise your hand. So we have a question, which is, why did the state even think that was a better alternative? What are the pros for the state regarding for Proposition 25, an alternative to cash bail? So why did the state think that was a better alternative?
Yeah, so when you look at algorithms, obviously there's like this veneer of science, right? There's this veneer of objectivity, and you see the bias in human judges' decisions, and you think that the solution to that is introducing technology and algorithms, which at first impression you don't see technology and algorithms as having the potential of being racist or as having the potential of being classist. You don't see that machine learning algorithm could have the potential to discriminate, because obviously with our criminal justice system there's been so much historical inequity that we kind of see that as a path forward in terms of introducing a more objective path to making those kinds of hard decisions. But the truth is that when you actually look at, kind of empirical data of states that have implemented these kinds of tools before, because artificial intelligence is trained on historical data, it actually reflects the structural, and it actually reflects existing structural inequality. Because think about it, if you're training a model to identify trends and patterns in old data, and one of those trends and patterns is racism, then the model will pick up on that and carry that forward in its new decisions. And an example of that is a groundbreaking ProPublica investigation actually found that a tool similar to this used in Broward County, Florida, was actually twice as likely to falsely label Black defendants as future criminals as it was for white defendants. And so that racial bias is actually carrying forward in these algorithms. But the truth is that most of their promise lies in the fact that they're perceived to be perfectly scientific, and they're perceived to be perfectly objective. But the truth is that obviously that's not how they actually are in reality, and when we look at the results.
Got it. Thank you, Sneha. And if people are interested more in the way that bias operates within these systems, Stop LAPD Spying has also explored this not just in the realm of sort of dirty data, like training a machine algorithm with bad data, but also the way that ideology and sort of an ecosystem of different people working on this together, whether it's academics, police, social services, how that all works together. And that's called we've called that the algorithmic ecology. And there's basically a framework to stop LAPD spying, especially under the data-driven policing working group has created that. And so Nadia just posted that. So we have another question, which is about these terms, and which is wondering if ENCODE Justice has ever looked into risk assessments in other areas such as child welfare system or child protective services.
Yeah, of course. So primarily in our organizing efforts and our advocacy efforts, we primarily focused on algorithms in the pretrial stage, but we do definitely plan to address them in other contexts as well. For example, these same tools are used by ICE. For example, the ACLU of New York recently filed a lawsuit against the New York branch of ICE after it was found that it appeared that ICE had actually rigged one of these algorithms to virtually detain all the defendants who had been accused of immigration violations. And you have people who, their most severe offense is a parking ticket or some other form of traffic violation, and they're being jailed or detained for days at the request of an algorithm. And because the algorithm had an over 99% detention recommendation rate, there was lots of controversy and lots of legal controversy as well. So you see that, this kind of precedent that we've set in terms of using these in the courts has also spread to immigration agencies and agencies like ICE and DHS. And as a person who asked the question also referenced, there's also this has been used to identify abusive families. This has been used to kind of track child abuse. This has been used to identify fraud in the welfare system. This has been used in healthcare, in housing, in hiring. Really, these algorithms are shaping our world, and there are reports of racial and gender bias in almost every single one of those applications. So it's definitely very disturbing and sinister as we see kind of these becoming more and more pervasive.
So regarding the fact that they're becoming more persuasive, one of the things that we've been following is that the latest round of CVE grants, which are now being branded as TVTP, or Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention, based on the Department of Homeland Security, or they're coming from the Department of Homeland Security. A big theme in this round of grants is what they call threat assessment. What is the difference between risk assessment and threat assessment, and why do you think this has become an increasing focus of the DHS as well as law enforcement agencies, when we know that the system has always been guilty as hell? Why is why are they shifting into this now?
So obviously, I think when it comes to DHS, it's more in the context of these counterterrorism efforts. And I'm not really sure if there's an algorithmic component to the threat assessments that DHS is currently deploying. I'll do some more research on that. But I do think that for the most part, I think it hasn't really been too AI heavy. I think it's mostly been kind of threat assessments in a non-algorithmic context. But I do anticipate that in the future, DHS will start employing these algorithms very similar to what we're already seeing in courts and in agencies like ICE, in order to identify people who could potentially be perpetrators of, supposed extremist violence. And I do think that there have been efforts to kind of use AI in identifying potential perpetrators of terrorism or potential perpetrators of terrorist attacks, but I don't know that DHS has specifically implemented that technology yet, but I do think that it's something that we should be concerned about for the future. And so I think that in terms of the fact that this is an increasing focus of DHS kind of paints a very frightening reality for us. I think one of the focuses of Encode Justice as a whole has been to dismantle what we think of as a tech to prison pipeline, and what some have called as some have labeled a new Jim Code, a reference to the Jim Crow laws that enforced racial segregation in the US. And obviously we're seeing the technology has kind of been used as a tool to fuel the carceral state and to kind of criminalize and incarcerate communities that have already been long marginalized. And to see this technology also potentially being adopted by powerful institutions like DHS and ICE also kind of paints a pretty grim picture of what the future of, of surveillance would look like. And I do think that it does kind of tie into a larger trend of surveillance and criminalization of these of marginalized communities.
And would you be able to talk a little bit about specifically how and who Encode Justice organizes, and what your strategies have been, and how you build youth power in fighting these systems and these programs?
Yeah, of course. So we kind of worked with the Committee to End Pretrial Racism in our No on Prop 25 campaign. And, as youth organizers, we kind of did deliver the specific perspective of how these algorithms impact youth. And we collaborated with the Justice LA Coalition to put together informational videos, one of which kind of specifically focused on these algorithms target and how they target youth, and kind of covered past data and statistics showing the disproportionate impact of these algorithms on youth. And so that's kind of the perspective that we've taken. We've been involved in social media campaigning. Obviously, the coalition was involved in Twitter storms, phone banking, text banking, op-ed writing, things like that. And pretty much every different possible avenue of advocacy possible in order to ensure that voters struck down the bill, which was successful. As you guys may or may not know, Prop 25 failed in California and was rejected. And we do like to think that that was in large part due to our advocacy efforts. And so kind of tying that back to the larger impact of these algorithms on youth. So across the nation, over 190 jurisdictions use tools with factors relating to age. And usually younger ages are linked to higher risk scores, and age correlates with questions on that questionnaire that ask for things like current age or age at first arrest. And age at first arrest, for example, is a common metric. And that kind of illustrates police behavior. And at the same time, because this is kind of being fed into an algorithm, it's very oversimplified and it doesn't take into account the larger picture. So for example, if you're just looking at age at first arrest, you're not taking into account, what eventually happened, if the charges were ultimately dropped, and it doesn't consider how much time has passed since the initial arrest or the social circumstances that might have led to certain groups being arrested at disproportionate rates. And being young often counts against someone as heavily or even more heavily than their criminal history. For example, one tool, I think, allocated 15 or so points to age at first arrest and only 10 points to having a past prison sentence. And obviously more points correlates to higher risk. And with another tool that was going to be implemented in California, simply being 22 or younger, nothing else, just being 22 or younger gets the same amount of points towards new criminal activity as having 3 or more prior violent convictions. So obviously that's definitely very insidious. And in the results from one tool alone, age alone was able to explain 60% of the variation in scores, even more so than race, gender, current charge, or past criminal history. And obviously that this disproportionately impacts, youth of color, who are far more likely to be pulled into the legal system than white youth. In 2015, Black youth were 5 times as likely, Native American youth were 3.1 times as likely, and Latinx youth were 1.6 times as likely as white youth to be incarcerated. And if you really think about all the factors that have historically led to the overcriminalization of youth, police presence in schools, the school to prison pipeline, the impact of earlier tough on crime policies, and the super predator myth, those biases and the impacts of those policies have been baked into our system. And as a result, they're baked into any data that can be extracted from that system. And so kind of behind this veneer of science and of objectivity, when that data is being fed to algorithms that would have even more power to punish and to detain and to incarcerate, there's huge implications behind that. It's automated racial profiling. And that's kind of why at Encode Justice, our fundamental understanding is that any form of racial justice would require algorithmic justice, and this current reality cannot be reconciled with that.
Thank you so much. I'm just wondering, because this is something that so many places have been exploring, this notion of justice within the system versus abolishing the system. And as a Stop LAPD Spying, we take a staunch abolitionist stance. What do you think would need to happen to abolish the use of risk assessments, or do you think that in order to achieve justice, we'd have to abolish the use of risk assessments and algorithms, or do you think that there's a way to make a just algorithm?
Well, I think that because of the very fundamental concept of how these algorithms are developed, they're using historical data. As long as our system has been biased in the past, that data will continue to exist. It's almost inextricable from the algorithms itself. And so really what I and a lot of other organizers that I work with, what our stance is on this is that there needs to be a moratorium on the use of these algorithms altogether, because there's no way for these to potentially be deployed equitably. And even if they did have 100% accuracy rate, even if they were perfectly accurate and there was no racial disparity in their use, just the notion of a human defendant being reduced to a data point, being kind of evaluated by an algorithm instead of a human judge, and kind of it's just racial profiling in and of itself, because there's no individualized justice, there's no due process. People are being reduced to a data point and they're being kind of compared to people based on statistical generalizations, and that in and of itself is inhumane and kind of runs counter to everything that we kind of see as being valuable within our system. And so I do think that, at least my perspective on this, is that we need to have a moratorium on the use of these tools altogether.
Thank you. And I'm just personally curious about this. Would you be able to share the tool that marks anybody below 22 as inherently criminalized, the same level as, I don't remember the exact data point that you said, but would you be able to share that?
So it was anyone 22 or below gets the same amount of points towards new criminal activity as someone 3 or more violent criminal convictions, and that's called the Public Safety Assessment, developed by Arnold Ventures. And scarily enough, that was the same tool that was going to be implemented in California. And Arnold Ventures, they were the primary funders of Prop 25. They were the #1 monetary backers of the Yes on Prop 25 committee, and that's the same tool that would have been used in California.
Wow. Very good thing that was defeated. Lastly, would you just talk about how people can support Encode Justice's effort, and also how youth can get involved?
Yeah, of course. So, kind of our primary medium of advocacy is, first off, we have like an electoral component of this, in which we kind of focus on specific legislation within California and nationwide and at the city level as well. So right now with our Stand Up to Surveillance campaign, we're specifically lobbying for a moratoria on police use of facial recognition technology. And so you can kind of support that by coming out to any of our events, participating in our town halls. If we host phone banks or text banks, we would gladly be willing to amplify that to the War on Youth community and kind of share those resources with you guys. And you guys can also kind of assist us in that way. And kind of just a quick plug in that regard, we do have a town hall coming up on November 21st at 1 p.m. So I'll drop a link to that in the chat. If any of you guys would be available at that time, you can please come out. It'll be a kind of a panel discussion with experts in the field of surveillance and in the field of AI bias. So if you guys, are free at that time, please do come out. And that's kind of one key way in which people can contribute to our efforts, just coming out to our events, kind of assisting us with text banking and phone banking, and amplifying our work on social media. And, I'll definitely share more of what we can do in the future with the War on Youth team if more things arise in the future.
Thank you. Are there any follow-up questions on any of these topics from the room, in terms of any things you're interested in that Sneha talked about, wanting to hear more about? Any thoughts about, yeah, feel free to message me or raise your hand. I can either read out loud or we can unmute you as well.
If we can unmute Jamie. Where?
Go ahead, Jamie.
Hi. So this conversation's like amazingly important and so exciting to hear. So I just wanted to share a little bit about the fight in LA that's currently local to LAPD and ways that we can co-collaborate. I help to facilitate the data-driven policing working group within the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, and it's an extension of the coalition's work when we defeated two data-driven policing programs, which at that point were called predictive policing programs, that utilized risk assessments and the algorithm and algorithms as well. The two programs were PredPol and PredPol used the algorithm, the ETAS model, and then also Operation Laser, which used a risk assessment and various forms of GIS mapping of the community. So I think what's really cool is finding a way to partner up, because one of the things that I think is so interesting about data-driven kinds of methodologies is seeing how they are permeating and this kind of idea of addressing like societal problems through a prevention mode where you're actually collecting massive amounts and, you know, engaging in data mining and behavioral surveillance in order to prevent things from happening, as opposed to kind of looking at the reality of things. So we have an active campaign that's looking to take down LAPD's data-informed community-focused policing, which incorporates three functions of policing: location-based and offender-based and community policing programs, which all have their aspects of various forms of surveillance, uses of algorithms, risk assessments, and then with the soft glove of community policing and relationship building. So you know, the landscape is phenomenal. The way that many fusion centers are being set up locally through neighborhoods where they have data analytics centers that are using real-time mapping and integrating data into algorithms as officers are picking up this information from their beat. So yeah, so there's so much work to be done, because I mean, it would be great to talk more so that we could exchange, you know, knowledge and information about how we are really trying to take down LAPD's use of this, and really seeing that there is no place for algorithms or risk assessments in our society, and they should be completely dismantled and banned from being used. So it's so great to hear that other spaces are also very active in this work as well. It took us about from 2014, when we first started to raise the alarm about predictive policing in LA, and formally launched our campaign in 2016, and were successful in 2019 to expose and dismantle these programs. So, you know, the way that they creep back and the way they try to reframe them into something nice and something gentle, I think is the danger, you know, of even kind of giving space to any forms of datification or predictive analytics into our lives. So super excited to hear this, and the work that you all are doing is phenomenal, and would love to, you know, check in and just see how we can continue to build that movement to dismantle surveillance in Los Angeles.
Yeah, of course. And I think that under the guise of achieving public safety, it's just really an epidemic of high-tech mass incarceration. And so I would love to connect with you to kind of work together on, we've also taken a stance against predictive policing and analytics like that. So I would love to kind of work with you and your group to kind of build power in that space. Sounds amazing. Thank you.
The other thing that we've been exploring in our war on youth fight, and there's a big overlap with the data-driven policing fight too, is the way that these programs are also rolled out as partnerships between sort of, there's a math world and then there's the narrative developing world, where you know, where we see researchers getting CVE grants in colleges to develop models of radicalization based on basically based on trying to decide what events in a person's life leads them to quote unquote be radicalized. So when they develop that narrative, that idea of the narrative, and then they can datify that. And we see the same thing, you know, PredPol one of the original things that the researcher who was an anthropologist was looking at was like how people decided to move stones in Tibet. I can't remember exactly. Jamie knows it better, but the point is that they start out, there's often this partnership between, it's not just the math and science worlds, but it's a really full academic complicity even across disciplines. So yeah, really interested in exploring that more too. And I think that, so I'm done with all my questions, but if there's anybody else in the audience that wants any other questions for Sneha? Questions or comments?
Also, I just dropped a link in the chat that kind of has a lot more information about how age plays into these algorithms. And so if you want to check that out, that's where I got a lot of my stats from. And it has a lot more information about, you know, specific use cases of these algorithms and specific tools that have had disproportionate impact on young people.
Got it. And then also I wanted to credit for when we talked about the algorithmic ecology earlier, also want to credit, it was a collaboration between the fight that Jamie helps to facilitate with Stop LAPD Spying, along with Free Radicals as well, an organization. So just wanted to give credit where it's due.
And also one more thing I wanted to, oh, sorry. I think I interrupted.
No, go for it, sorry, Sneha.
Yeah, so one more thing that I wanted to add that I didn't bring up earlier is that I think one more thing that adds to the danger surrounding these algorithms is how opaque they are, because a lot of these tools are developed by companies and corporate interests like Arnold Ventures are kind of treated as trade secrets, and they're kind of handled with a proprietary nature. So kind of revealing their inputs and their outputs would kind of be seen as kind of exposing a trade secret. And because of that, a lot of their results, a lot of what goes into those algorithms is protected under law and can't be challenged in court. So when defendants are actually reduced to a data point, and when they're evaluated by these algorithms, they don't even know what the score generated for them is. They have no way of challenging that legally or in court. It's really a framework that protects these companies and shields them from having to take any accountability for results that are incredibly far off.
Wow.
So that's something else that kind of adds to the danger of these algorithms.
So thank you so much, Sneha, for your time and for sharing this with us. And yeah, looking forward to building with you. And I think we can move on to the next agenda item if you want. Thank you so much, Sneha.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Oh, and
yeah, of course.
sorry,
Thank you.
Sneha, if you can post in the chat social media for Encode Justice so everybody can follow you.
Yeah, of course.
Cool. Sorry, thank you. Go for it, Nadia.
Cool, thank you, Akhil. Thanks, Neha. Yeah, so wanted to now just basically to kind of help close, and then we're going to share some materials with you all at the end too. But just wanted to put the reminder out there that if folks are interested in joining the War on Youth fight and supporting, just send us a message with your email. We're going to start doing we're doing some working meetings. One is next Wednesday. So feel free to just message that to us in the chat, your email, and we'll connect with you. And so just wanted to basically move forward and just have Hamid talk a little bit about some of the things going on with the police commission, with LAPC fails, and just also some of the, the defunding of surveillance, community police partnerships, and how folks can get linked up with that as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. I have one more thing. Also, if and once maybe talk about that, we wanted to just see if we could have a short conversation just about how we can bring in the youth component into that fight as well. So yeah, thank you.
Definitely. Well, I was going to start off with that. So thank you for the opportunity to share this. Actually, today we just wrote a letter, the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, Black Lives Matter, White People for Black Lives, and LA Can, to the Inspector General and also the Police Commission as well, and to the mayor about the latest stops report that came in. And it's also interesting, that as we are speaking about algorithms, the good old-fashioned policing still is very much the majority of the policing that's going on. It's interesting because Burbank Police Department and several other police departments decided not to go down that route because, maybe they thought it was job insecurity, but also their own gathering information on the beat and all that. So the Inspector General about 2 weeks ago released a report on the stops, on the annual stops that people were stopped for. Now, whether those were stops during traffic, whether on foot, whether they were also people were stopped because they were there as a result of a call for service from the community members. And it's really very, I mean, it's very disconcerting, and it's also raises a whole lot of red flags and concerns about these things as well, because it is very clearly there's a whole lot of racial profiling going on. When we see that overall there were 712,000 stops that were made. It was 712,600 some odd number in the year 2019, and in which the Black community was stopped made about 27% of those stops, which when you have a 9% of the population of the city, which is LAPD's jurisdiction, you're looking at just clearly a 3-to-1 disparate impact. But what was also very concerning to see was the youth makeup of that as well. That there were close to 4,000 youth. They were stopped as well under the age of 18, and there was several hundred youth who were stopped and information taken who were under the age of 14. So babies and children were literally being stopped and their information. And of course, one of the things that we learned through our work around this thing, that the field interview cards, the FI cards, are one of the primary informants for social network analysis and gathering people's information and then kind of building that network from, through a metadata as to how people are being followed and how people are being traced and tracked. So that is a huge fight that is going on with the LAPD about these stops. They were using, so they basically pulled out and handcuffed folks from the Black community nearly 10% more than, or 10 times more than they did for white folks. They were searched 5 times more than white people. They were ordered out of the car 4 times more than white people as well, 14 times more than around speeding violation they were stopped. But again, it goes back to the same thing that we talked about back when we did a presentation at the City Hall in 2018 around that the argument, or the under the guise of narcotics and contrabands and weapons, it was overwhelmingly the white community that they found a whole bunch of this weaponry when they were stopping and searching and reaching out to people as well. Nothing surprising, nothing new, but again, a huge issue. The other thing that also came out was the release of LAPD's annual complaint report, which includes a whole lot of different reports, which about insubordination, about drinking on the job, about domestic violence, about sexual assault, about this, that, and the other. But one piece that we have been fighting for so many years, at least, myself being witnessing in there for over 15 years and with the coalition about 10 years, is this whole data about racial profiling. So now the little history about the racial profiling is that back in 2007, LAPD officially changed the term racial profiling to biased policing, which completely waters down the whole process. And this was done by Bill Bratton, who used to be the chief of the police. It completely shifts the whole narrative when we talk about, but okay, let's look at biased policing as well. So last year in 2019, there were, if I remember correctly, 734 allegations of biased policing against the LAPD. And guess what? They were sustained, meaning that yes, they were true, 0. So the LAPD comes back and says, well, no, you're a community of liars, it's 0. And then we went back and did a whole 10-year average. And over the last 10 years, close to about 3,900 cases of biased allegation were filed, or complaints were filed, and 0 were sustained. So in essence, And I know our own, comrades, our family in Skid Row, like Dogon himself has filed about 105 different complaints, and all has been zero. And then, we're going to be having a press conference next Tuesday in person, and I was going to invite people to come to that as well outside the LAPD headquarters, and going to invite folks as well. And one of the BLM members, Chris, was literally stopped and pulled out and made to sit down, and they told him that you were wearing clothes similar to somebody that they had called on who was running away from police. So how do you first of all figure out somebody's driving? They are wearing clothes, and you pull them over, and then you have them sit down on the sidewalk. So close to 3,900, zero sustained, which also is very interesting. That now, if you put it in this light of 712,000 stops, right, where 27% make up the Black community. And these are stops for varied reasons. And all of those allegations were not due to these stops, but looking at the practice of profiling, that comes to 0.00013 or some odd percent. It's still, this is zero sustained. So I think this is really the kind of the deep sort of fight that as they are building this veneer of science and pseudoscience to gloss over and to mask their profiling through this bogus language of science, I think it becomes really crucial that how do we keep on, that what is our fight? How do we keep on organizing? How do we keep on going after them? So next Monday, my apologies, on next Monday at 10 a.m. We're going to be having a press conference, and please look for that. That's November 16th. Look for it on social media and all of that. And we want to invite people, or we are going to be inviting people who were stopped themselves about the trauma of being humiliated, about the trauma of being racially profiled, about the trauma of being at certain times being tasered or guns pulled out at you. And then when you complain about racial profiling, well, gee, you're just a bunch of liars. So that's what it comes down to. And real quickly, the second thing I just wanted to quickly bring up to date is that today we launched a social media campaign on LAPD's budget. Our lane is very much looking at it through the technology lane, that what is the money? And while materially speaking, and we've gone back about 6 years, and we created an Excel sheet and looked at all of LAPD's budget, that what the material support is. So materially speaking, for things like Palantir and Trapwire, license plate readers, this, that, and the other, it comes to about $65 million. But the overall budget for the LAPD was about 3.2 billion or 3.1 billion. But each and every program is basically data driven as well. So in essence, it's not that the license plate reader contract is like $1 million, but it has an impact of over $3 billion. So we need to be looking at it through that lens as well. So our demand really is to go after this thing and keep on building with our comrades who were in the People's Budget, which the coalition participated very briefly in. And so please go to the Instagram that we've launched that campaign. There's some statistical analysis in there as well. And the goal is, quite frankly, just to starve the beast, just starve the damn beast. So because and we have drawn a whole big old pig, which calls to starve this damn beast as well. So the goal is to keep on fighting this thing, and to keep on going after their money as well, which will include, after the next stage of this was be to go after the nonprofits, and all these nonprofits that are giving them funding, typically how the LA Police Foundation and how the police unions have set it up, and how much money is being poured in. So please check that out as well. And this is on our social media team. And that's basically the update from the Police Commission for this week, and the campaign that we are launching. And lastly, we will be, I believe Jamie will be announcing that not the next one, but the following one, because one of the things we also want to do is that we also want to go after Gascon, the new DA that was elected. Because Gascon is an algorithmic champion. Gascon was the chief of San Francisco PD back in 2009 after he left LA, because he wanted to be the chief. And then, when Bratton was leaving, and then he became the DA's. But We have all the documentation. We're actually slowly putting stuff out on his love fest with algorithms, and because now he wants to move into predictive prosecution. That's a whole piece, which I guess so one of the things is that while on one hand, Prop 25 or was defeated, but now you have the DA, the prosecutorial branch, basically preparing all this data-driven, risk assessment-based prosecution and providing all this information to the judicial branch as to what, and of course, it's a part and parcel of doing that. So several fights coming up. So stay tuned, and just want to stop there and don't want to take too much time to see if folks have any comments or any questions about the money side of it, the stop side of it, the zero sustain side of it, and of course the DA, which I mean, the biggest oxymoron I've heard is about having a progressive prosecutor. I mean, there's no such thing ever that can ever be, because this is the most violent, the most dangerous position in the criminal injustice system. So I'll stop there. Maybe I'm going to call someone out and see if Mike, who is in San Francisco and has been organizing and lawyering in San Francisco, Mike, if you have any comments to make about Gascon and through your experience, so please.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
So because I only practice immigration law, I don't have direct experience with Gascon. That said, I only recently heard him sort of, rebranded as a progressive prosecutor. No one was ever talking about that sort of thing while he was DA up here in San Francisco. I'm baffled by that notion. That said, if you think there's anything I might be able to help with in terms of getting info on his policies with regard to technology, AI, predictive policing, et cetera, what happened up here in San Francisco, I've got some connections in various agencies here, and I think I could, do some snooping around. I'd be happy to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And maybe if, and I'm so sorry I'm taking space here, Akhil and Nadia, but since we're on the subject, if I can ask one more question. And maybe if, Mamta, may I just lean on you and see, because you're also involved in lawyering and organizing in the Bay Area. So if you have any thoughts about the progressive prosecutor, you could unmute yourself, or.
Yeah, thank you, Hamid. I mean, I think there is a concern that I don't know that much about Gascon other than, yes, like you said, there is no such thing as a progressive prosecutor, and I think the thing that we really need to be clear about from the get-go is what are our demands, what are the things that we want to sort of be clear about in terms of policy. And as he takes over, I mean, I think that he's an improvement over Jackie Lacey, of course. But I do think that this is a moment where we should be really, as a community, be really clear about what the problems are, and maybe ask and put those forth very clearly before he takes office.
Cool. Thank you for that. No, thank you for that. And I just want to end here by saying that by no means this should be seen as because I think the campaign that BLM ran was a brilliant campaign. Absolutely, that's exactly what people power is. That's exactly where an incumbent who was just floating through and was almost getting ready to be in their third term with Jackie Lacey. How do people organize, and how do they force them? And of course, I mean, Gascon entered the race about a year ago or so, where basically capitalizing on the work, and really kudos to folks like Helen and so many other families who were every Wednesday, day in and day out, whether it was going to Jackie Lacey's neighborhood, whether it was going outside the Hall of Justice. So I think we absolutely would need to honor the power of the people, the power of the families, and the power of organizing as well, because that's what it really takes to bring these people down. But now that is done. So now going back to, as Mamta was saying, that what is our next step to make sure that and go after Gascon and completely send a message that this ain't going to fly here, because we're going to be after you and we're going to be coming after you. So thank you, Nadia, for that space. Nadia, you're muted.
Sorry. My bad. No, I was gonna say that that's all good, and I was actually gonna ask too. Just I have my own thoughts about it, but wanted to see, how, like, I don't know, just thinking of like young people and young people being the ones that really are harassed the most and everything. Just wanted to see if you, Hamid, if anybody just had any thoughts on really how can we connect this to our war on youth fight, and particularly to the gang narrative and the violent extremism narrative that's being, that have been connected, right? We know the last 30 plus years, the gang narrative has been the framework, and now it's connecting and has been very explicitly connected to the anti-terrorism, anti-violent extremism. So yeah, just wondering if you have any thoughts about that, or anybody else wants to share about that too. Or maybe if you want to start, and then folks can jump in.
Well, I'm just taking too much space, but I think real quickly, my thoughts would be that obviously when you look at the stop data, and you have 3,900 young folks under the age of 18 who have now gone into this database as well. This is what was being shared earlier too, that how that creates that whole trajectory, that now you're in the stalker state, you're in the database for the stalker state. So how that data moves, now, and it's not a matter of like whether you get convicted or what happens in the court. No, this data has already marked you as a point of entry, whether it was the first time or a repeat time that is going on. The second thing I would also say is that this is something that particularly linking Brantham and his work on creating as a co-creator of PredPol and this whole algorithmic policing, just moving that around the country and internationally as well, now being in the thick of the community safety partnership in various public housing projects. So now you have a person who's already looking at and creating these algorithms around forecasting gang violence and other pieces as well. So what that forecasting gang violence would look like, because obviously now through all, and you all have talked about it too, that the way this whole veneer of science is being used is that there's a whole process, like this has gone way beyond school to prison pipeline, and almost like, from a womb to prison pipeline. That's why looking at DCFS and looking at various of these public agencies becomes really critical as well. So that's what all I would say is like looking at the massive expansion of these things. And the third thing, lastly, I would say is that while gang databases, LAPD is not participating, the sheriffs are, and everybody else is in the Cal Gang database. So then, but yet at the same time, the escalation of that, and I think Jamie has done a whole lot of work on that as well, this whole language of repeat offenders and habitual offenders, although we have the chronic offender language as well, how that is kind of just labeling in. So I think this thinking of it intersectionally and ultimately what purpose it serves, I think would be really awesome for us to start thinking about deeply as well.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, and just want to see if anybody else has just questions about that, or any comments as well. And also, Hamid, if you can put in the chat some of the information. Like I know we haven't made the page for the press conference, but for other pieces too. Yeah. So yeah, feel free if anybody wants to put in the chat if you have questions or comments. But basically, what I wanted to share and just kind of close with as well is, just give me a second, I'll open it up on my screen, and then I'll share my screen in just a minute with you all too. All right, I'll just share my screen. I wanted to just share our zine, which is a resource folks can look at. And actually, YJC was a big part in making this zine with us as well. This is part of our zine series that we've been making with Baby Anarchists and Stop LAPD Spying. And we're currently, we're working on our third zine, which is around health. And so we did the first one when, quarantine and COVID started. And this you can see is our zine for the War on Youth. And I'm going to go ahead and put it in the chat for folks. But basically it looks at some history. It looks at some current fights that were happening at the time when we made this, which has been a good, probably close to 2 months now. And then it also has this resource section as well. And so with different mutual aid, as well as hand washing stations, and other resources for youth too. So just wanted to basically share that. And here is a timeline that we also put at the end of it of how the coalition and community members were able to dismantle the predictive policing program here in LA. So let me copy and paste that for folks in the chat as well. There you all go. And so just wanted to see then if, if folks have any questions or anything about the zine or about the fight in general. I know it is a little bit early, so wanted to also open the space and see if folks have any announcements to share or any just general questions. And also wanted to invite again and appreciate the folks who've shared their email. If you'd like to get involved in, like I said, we're looking for support for outreach material creation. We're in the process of making videos as well. So we've already done some storyboarding, graphic design, research. So there's a lot of areas for you to plug into as well. So just that reminder, feel free to send that email in a private message. Yeah, and then so does anybody have any announcements or they would like to share, or any calls for support for your organization, for anyone in your community? Want to open the space for that too. Okay, that's all good too. I know folks got a chance to share and ask questions earlier as well. So just wanted to then, so it looks like Hamid is sharing some of the resources. So just wanted to also let folks know next week, next Tuesday at 6 p.m. is our general coalition meeting. That's where we look at all of the fights and, we choose different political landscapes to focus on as well. So want to invite folks to that. Which is next Tuesday at 6 p.m. And Hamid, maybe could you repeat some of the information around the press conference, just in case folks didn't get that too?
Yeah, it's November 16th, which is a Monday at 10 o'clock. We're still trying to see whether this would be online or in person, mostly in person. We're trying to see if we can turn this into mobilization as well. So just keep an eye out and try not to give too much on Zoom.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, keep an eye out for social media, because it's going to be like, we'll be putting it out there once it's like a day before or something.
Okay, great. Okay, so are there any other announcements folks, like I said, would like to share? Oh, thanks Akil for putting the details in the chat as well. Okay, well, I know it's ending a little bit early then, so we'll just go ahead and close the meeting. And if there's nothing else, hopefully, we're looking forward to seeing folks next Tuesday. I feel like it's weird. Usually we're like scrambling. We're like, oh no, it's 8 o'clock. It feels kind of weird to end the meeting a little bit early, but yeah, okay. Well then, I guess that's it. Nobody has any announcements to share, and yeah, y'all have a great evening.
Thank you. You too.
Good
All
night.
right, bye
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.